Wiley Ray Hodges, born October 13th, 1926, Watauga, Texas, Tarrant County, USA. His father was Herman Walter Hodges, born in 1899. His mother was Virginia Irene Faulkner, born in 1905. Wiley married Tiny Marie Martin in 1926. Had three children: Linda Ray Hodges, Patricia Marie Hodges, Wiley David Hodges, and Wiley Ray Hodges also married a Helen Gwendolyn Whiteman. Here is the story about Wiley Ray Hodges.
This is Wiley Ray Hodges, 2016. I was a great-great-grandson of Wiley Wilda Potts Sr. and his wife, Margaret Jane Walker. They lived in Missouri. Wiley's mother was Elizabeth Potts, and apparently his dad had died earlier. I can't really trace that. Wiley Wilda had some brothers and sisters, and they always got a share of her, after her death, of inheritance. Wiley and Margaret were married, had been married, before she passed away. When he got his inheritance from Elizabeth, one of the daughters got the two slaves, and the others divided up the cattle and the some land. With Wiley's inheritance of just cash, I think it was, they got on a horse, and he and his wife Margaret, she was pregnant, come to Texas to her mother and daddy, the Walkers, which had already come to Texas and established a farm right west of Watauga, Texas, on White's Creek there. So that's where they were coming. Okay, they had no possessions, they just what they could carry on the saddles. They arrived here at Watauga to her mother and dad, and Wiley Willis Jr. then was born. And shortly after he was born, that's 1852, Margaret and the dad both died from some kind of something from the travel that they got. They knew where they died from this, both of them. Their son that had just been born had to have a place, so her mother and her dad, her mother's name was Margaret Weir, and married to William Anderson Walker. That was her dad. They had several children, but when little Wiley was born, her mother, which would be his grandmother, had just had a child, a little Harvey or Donald. She took little Wiley and nursed him with her newborn, which is a little older, not much. And he then was raised by them in a farm right there west of Watauga. I don't know much about his life there, but when her mother and dad, his mother and dad died, they gave him, even though he was the grandson, I think it was 60 acres of land right a little further west of Watauga, and that's where he started making his life, and for years, and kid. When Wiley Wilda Jr. was born in 1852, and his wife was Sarah Susan Johnson, her mother was Serena Johnson Potts, that married a Faulkner named John Rayford Faulkner. And that marriage then, of the three daughters, one of them was my mother, Virginia Irene Faulkner, married my dad, Herman Walter Hodges. And his father was Harvey Bryant Hodges. They were around the Stevens area of Texas, Stevens County, that particular family. They were married in 1922. They had a child, H.W. Jr., died at birth shortly after. They didn't think they were going to have any more children. They adopted from the Fort Worth Orphan Home ace boy, and they named him H.W. Jr. And not knowing that they told his mother couldn't have any more children. I surprised them. I was born in 1926. And we then were living on a farm of one of the family farms owned by Wiley Potts, and later Serena inherited the Faulkner that we lived on. This ranch. It's about 600 acres. And Dad sharecropped it. He had depression time was tough. He had chickens, the eggs to sell, the sheep, we cotton, corn, and raised big gardens. Had milk cows that he sold. We made butter, a lot of things in order to survive during Depression time. And then in 1934, she became pregnant with later twins. Eddie Dwayne and Teddy Wayne Hodges were born of twins. Shortly after that, 18 months or less, my mother, Virginia Irene, after the twins was born, became infected some way or another, and she passed away in Harris Hospital in downtown Fort Worth at age 29. That's 1935. So we had to have some place to go. Dad and the Faulkners decided that John Rayford and Serena would take Eddie, Teddy, and Dwayne and raise. At that time, the twins were about 18 months old. I was 9, I guess. A few months after we moved in there with them, Dad had to go to town to go to work. Depression time, had to sell what the farm was at his. He was a sharecropper. He got a job in town when he was building the Cosmiana and the Will Rogers Coliseum for the 1936 centennial. Shortly after that, then, Teddy Wayne, one of the twins, while we're living at the Walters at Watauga, near a farm there near Watauga, it took sick. Come to find out, it was spinal meningitis. We called the Dr. T.C. Colley from Keller. He came down, and there was nothing to do. Within a few hours of the day, he passed away. He was buried. So then, about 6 months later, Dad had got a place in town. He rented a little duplex on the north side on Rosen Street, and came and got Eddie and I. So we moved to this house on Rosen Street, and it was in the summer. Eddie and I would play up and down the north side, Hazel Avenue, all that. We went down all during the summer to the cattle, the north side, where all the cattle and set in the north side. That's where the packing plants and all that was. So we'd go in. Now we played all over north side, but then he did hire a lady to come help during the day, and she just took care of Eddie and I. Did the house. She dipped tobacco or dipped snuff, and then she had a handkerchief she kept in her apron pocket. That didn't look good. But we had different ones off and on, and that helped Dad. But we moved from several places. But anyhow, while I was there, then I started to school that fall at Sam Rosen School, which was walking distance, or roughly, there on the north side of Fort Worth. And at that place, my mother's sister, Wiley Ray Faulkner, was teaching after she had got her teacher's license. And then also, she was going with and dating a teacher down the hall named Noble T. Norman. They were dating. I would take little notes from my aunt from the writing in the art room up the hall and give them to Noble T. Norman. He'd write a note and I'd take it back to my aunt. So they had a little love thing going. They later married. Dad then rented 80 acres out there near Everman, and had a farmhouse on it. Had no electricity, had water. Yeah. A nice old farmhouse. So we moved out there, and then had places to roast peanuts, tomatoes, cantaloupes, various vegetables, enough that he could sell on the market to make some money. He still worked for the cities off and on, whatever something came up out there. Like stock shows, he worked in the stock show area. and with his truck hauling hay and all that. Other things, anything happened, but still had this little farm. So Eddie and I and him batched out there, and all the little farm duties and extra stuff, and we went into the Everman School. The Everman School had finally got a little school bus there at the last. I didn't finish school there. I left. I didn't get enough time in to pass. But in the meantime, before then, this farm deal, we'd take these vegetables and whatever we had to sell down to my grandmother Hodges, which was a widow at that time. There on McCart in Biddison Street in South Fort Worth. We would take these fruits and whatever we had down to the grandmother's and put it on this big tree. Eddie and I had a little wagon. We put a big old cart or box or something on it. We would pull it up and down that area, knocking doors, and it seemed like everybody would buy a cantaloupe or some tomatoes. We sold a lot of it. Some days we'd sell half a pickup load, just here and there. So that went on during the time when the harvest was on. Now, my grandmother, Viney Fulbright Hodges, married to H.B. Hodges, worked for the railroad many years. And in that latter part of his employment there, he slipped some way on the train. He's a conductor, I think, and he lost a lower limb below the knee. He had an artificial one.
Wiley Ray Hodges, around 1937.
Okay, we'd carry these vegetables, etc., cantaloupes, watermelon. Then we'd, like I say, we'd take our little wagons and we'd pull it and knock doors. And Eddie wasn't big enough to really do much. He helped push the wagon. We sold a lot. The money, of course, helped the family and Dad. And off and on the years following, there's a lot of little things happen with Eddie and I of growing up there. We had, that was woods, a lot of woods. We would go up there and possum hunt and squirrel hunt and things of that nature. Then there was sand fields there that had a lot of arrowheads from Indians that were on the creek there at Village Creek, which years ago was where they had a camp. So I found lots of arrowheads. I would sell them to people in town for 10 cents or a quarter. I had a lot of them, not thinking that I would soon run out. But we did things like that. Now, Dad would go to West Texas and go out there with cotton picking time, for instance. While the Mexicans were picking cotton, they go from one farmer up and go from field to field. My dad had the truck, and he would go along with their series, hauling the cotton to the gins, and then coming back, and they'd fill what they picked in the truck and do it again. We slept in and around under the truck, had a canvas over the top. We slept in with some cots and kind of cooked there with a little cool oil thing. That's went on for about a month every fall. It was cotton season, so he picked up some money there. So that was kind of one of the issues, but at one time we decided that he was going with a lady by the name of Mary, and she had run a cafes before. There was a cafe for lease or rent there on Riverside Drive, and that's east part there of Fort Worth. It was a deal that had a store and it had a residence in the back of it, which Mary and my dad, he was married a very short time, and Eddie and I. But then that didn't work out. He was still working for the cities, so we went back to the farm and started again. But in the meantime, while we were gone, somebody else was living at the farm and burnt the farmhouse down. So this lady, Miss C.F. Adams, her husband had headed for retirement. He died. She agreed then to furnish the lumber if Dad would build a little house, which we did. No electricity, outdoor bathroom, had water from the windmill, etc. It was a very primitive life and no air conditioning. The heating was from wood stoves or kerosene that they cooked on. Dad raised us practically by himself, and we followed wherever he went. Didn't get much schooling, Eddie didn't either. And a lot of little things, that you happen to go down to swimming in the village creek there at the old Blue Hole with kids from Everman. They'd be down there in the summer. And Dad traveled a lot with his truck, hauling from San Antonio vegetables and cotton or whatever we could haul. And we grew up that way. Then we hunted in the woods up there and hunted arrowheads and worked most of the time in the farm. They had chickens. We had a couple of hundred laying hens. We had to take care of that. Had a few cows. We had to milk. Granny had the barns full of corn, ear corn that had to be processed for the cows. So it's the farmer deal, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. This period of the farm life and etc. was when the oats and the wheat was ripe. It was cut down and bundled with a jute cord and called bundles, and these were stacked in shocks, just little piles to dry. So later on, when they kind of dried, there was a person, Mr. Mann, that had a thrashing machine that he custom thrashed. He went all around the different farms, go to this one, go to that one. He was on the Sam Vaughn farm on the Rendon Road, west of Everman. So Dad went down there. Naturally, we worked in the fields, get the shocks and bundles and take them down with a pitchfork and throw them into this thrashing machine, and it then would thrash it. Put straw out in a pile in the back, and the grain would come out the side. You'd hold a sack and catch it, and that was taken into either to their storeroom or take it to town and sell it. On that trip of when we were working on that farm, Abe Martin and his wife, Mary Martin, they had the 3 children, and they had the pasture in this little house. Abe was in the water well business. Of the 3 children, he had a girl and 2 boys. I was in this field that particular day, and working in the field, maybe 700-800 feet from there. Their daughter, who was named Tiny Marie Martin, had a horse, a paint horse, she rode without a saddle. And she was running across the pasture near coming out toward, look at the farm, at the thrash or something. The horse stopped and she fell off. Well, I didn't know. I had seen her at the Everman school a year or something ago, but really didn't know her. I went across there to see if she was okay. Helped her get up. She was skint on the knees and had her elbows skint. Seemed to be okay, and I just kind of got acquainted with Marie. In the school then, for days to follow, we became close friends. That fall, we became in love to be married. We wanted to get married. 16. Parents said no, couldn't do it, too young. I could not finish high school at Everman. They had no summer school. So here I was, 16. I wanted to get married and I'm going to be drafted for the Army. So I got a job in Fort Worth on Montgomery Street with a double seal piston ring company as an apprentice machinist. While living there at Everman on the farm, there was a neighbor named Snide Wilson. He was a foreman there. And he asked if we could come down to work. During the war, they had to have people. I went down and trained as a machinist for 2 years and lived at the farm. But then in 1943, in December, we decided that we wanted to get married, so we'd have to elope. I had an uncle of Dad's brothers, Claude Hodges, had married a wife, Durant, Oklahoma, one of the Moat girls, Evelyn Moat, and married Hodges. Marie and I decided, we called them and said I could get married in Durant if we ran off, and we could spend the night over in Durant with them, the Moats. And so we did. We just went up there. It was closed on Christmas Eve. We saw the name on the door of the courthouse is Justice of Peace so-and-so, and we went down, knocked on their door. He and his wife come to the door. He said, well, it's Christmas Eve. I said, well, we got to get married. We want to get married. So he then took a key and went up there, possibly in the dark. He opened up the courthouse. We went in. He made out the papers. We paid her whatever, a few dollars, got her license. And then we came back to his house. He could marry. He married us and his wife as a witness. Then we went over to this motor place and spent the night. So then we came back from Durant after we were married. They had to tell them. We ran off. I told her mother. My dad, he didn't object because I was working. I was making some money. So I could get married. I could take care of them. I had an old car. I bought an Everman for $65, old 37 Chevy that I went to work back and forth. The Martins were a little cold about it, but then they thought, well, ain't nothing to do about it. So I became their son-in-law. And it ended up that he, Abe Martin, and I became big fishing partners, hunting partners for the rest of his life for years. His wife, Mary Martin, the mother of Tiny Marie, accepted us. They had a small farmhouse there. But then when we married, my father, Herman Walter, said he'd build us a little house there on the farm by their house over in the pasture. He went to town, to the lumber company, and I think it was $280 worth of lumber. We built a little floor. It was about 14 by 20, one room. Had water, no electricity, and outdoor bathroom, but we built this one room, very inexpensive, with a little window here and a window there. Single wall. It wasn't a double wall, and it was called planks to put up. We put 1x4 bats over the holes, the cracks, and inside you put a lot of wallpaper to keep the wind from coming through. So Marie came pregnant with another child, which turned to be number 2. Linda Ray was the first one. Patricia Marie was born at the farm, well, in town. But then a year or two later, she became pregnant again. We were going to have a boy. Ain't no room there. So I had a cousin that lived at Watauga, the Schillingers, and she was a Hodges from one of my dad's brothers, Brian Hodges. And anyway, her husband, they were building houses there in downtown, several acres there, about Highway 377, what's now Mid-Cities. We built the first little house there. A very simple house, didn't have air conditioning or anything like that. It had electricity, running water. And we then moved up there, and David then, they had room for all 3 kids, but only had 2 bedrooms. So then the boys and the girls had to sleep in the same room for a while. I then was drafted into the service. I was sent overseas. Now this is before we bought the house at Watauga. I spent 2 years in the South Pacific, in the Philippines, and came back through Hawaii at Hickam Field Air Base there by Pearl Harbor. Came by ship when I got to come home. And while I was there, come to find out, her uncle, Perry McInerney, he and his wife were there, and he was the police chief of Queen City right there by Pearl Harbor and Hickam Field. I visited with them. Then we got on the ship to come home. I was getting discharged. I guess 3,000 of us. It was the SS Chenault going to San Francisco. On the way, I decided, I saw them playing poker, this, that, and another. I didn't know nothing about it. I sat down with my helmet and started learning how to play poker, of all things. And I got to winning quarters and dimes, and finally got a few in the dollars. Before the ship landed in Camp Knight there by the Oakland Bay Bridge where we embarked, I had won $1,900. The ship came alongside, of course, port side, and we were, about 3,000 or so of us lined out. And they had a large place. This is where they received returning hero or war people. And they had lots of bunks and rooms in there that for overnight or 2 days till they could ship out to their homes. They had a big dining room, and they had steaks that night. First time I had a steak in 2 years, and from the Army in the South Pacific. But we had that that meal, and then we boarded the train, and it was box cars with lots of bunks in it. It had an old, right in the center had one. It had or they cooked and all, and you had to use mess gear, and you had to go down there and get your food and go back to your car. And I was about 10 cars from the cook, and of course they spilt the food on the floor. It's filthy. Before I went to San Antonio to Fort Sam, Houston, to get out. And while I was there, unknowingly, my dad's brother and uncle Fred B. Hodges had been in the South Pacific as a radio operator for 36 months. He fought from the beginning up to the end, never come home. He was in Fort Sam, Houston. I didn't know it. Come to find out, when I got out, he said, well, I was there too. I didn't know it. That was one little odd thing. And then we came back. Now, that's whenever Linda was born. That's when we started after build a little house. I was working in for the Double Seal Ring when I left. When I came back, my uncles were working at the Milliken Printing Company in Fort Worth on 13th Street. Claude Hodges was there. Their brother Huey and their Fred, they were all printers growing up, so they asked me then to come to the Milliken Press and learn the trade with a 4-year on the GI Bill. I talked with Mr. Milliken. He said that's fine. It was a small place. It was the old style of printing from lead type, etc. We didn't have any lithography at that time in the shop. But then, of course, we ended up with the kids moved to Watauga, but I did stay there. I took my training as journeyman. I then had other printing companies at night that wanted me to come help, which I'd go work at nights or something. Those days, we worked on Saturdays till noon, and you made 59 cents an hour, but the government would pay the GI Bill, would pay Mr. Milliken most of it while I trained. So I can remember back before when I was overseas there, the horrors of, it was interesting. We were out in the jungles, so to speak, and kind of training and lived in tents, and it was humid and monkeys hollering in the trees and wild and banana deals. But anyway, we'd go up in the hills and places and kind of look for Japanese that had ran off when MacArthur won the war. We'd go gather them up and find them. They'd been married to the Filipino girls or something, and take them to San Diego prison down in Manila. So these were little things that happened there. I didn't. Occasionally we could go to Manila, and then I could take my cigarettes and sell them downtown that I get from the PX, make a few bucks. But not much I could do there in the war-torn town. It's just little things like it. But we come back to Hickam Field, and it was nice there. And we could get a Jeep, and some of us go up there at the pineapple fields, and they'd give us guys all the ripe pineapples we wanted. I didn't do much, didn't want to spend much money there because I knew I was coming home. So that was kind of my trip overseas, and the ship trips were very of interest. So that was kind of my overseas deal, but then, like I say, we went to work for the Milliken Press. I got the 4-year deal with Claude Hodges. On the 5th year, Mr. Milliken passed away. He had a heart attack. And I was offered a partnership there. Fred B. Hodges was Claude's brother. Fred B. was the salesman. He and I bought the company, the Milliken Press. We continued at that location. He began to get new customers. We were making better sales. We rented a little larger place on 242 West 13th from 213, and we started to get some new presses, bigger offset presses. I hired a couple of people to help. Fred was selling good. We outgrew that place, so then we went out on Hemphill Street, in the corner of Vickery and Hickory in that area, and rented a larger building that had a print shop in it prior. And then we bought more presses. We even hired a girl to work in the office and had women working in the bindery. Fred B., his sales was still growing. We'd have a nice little bit and begin to hire people. We had a 5-year lease there. The people that we leased from for 5 years said that they would like to break our lease and pay us and have another company that wanted the building. The company we knew was Hent's company, an engraving company, a friend of ours in a way. But they paid us for a year to get out and let them have it, which is fine. It was a year's worth of money. The Free and Cersei Company, I went through the Masonic Lodge with Sidney Farrar, and they took us out to a building on Greenleaf Street in western Fort Worth. It's off of West 7th, just east of the Montgomery Ward in the industrial. This was a nice building, about 10,000 square feet, dock high, was about 3 years old. 1/4 of it was leased out to Otis Elevators as a little district office for the repairmen. It was ideal, the price was right. We got the lot in the building, I think about $65,000. But Otis Elevators paid as much each month that would pay for what we would pay for the bank loan. So that was a good deal, but a few years later we paid the bank off early. Fred Hodges, in the meantime, when we moved out there, he had a heart attack and passed away. One of the fellows at work and I trained was Sam H. Cook. And we decided that he could become a partner. He could pay Fred out his half. And he and Sam and I then, Sam would be the sales and I was still doing the inside. But then me buying the company, I worked at other places at night. I did lots of work for other places. I repaired machinery. And I would leave Milliken Press. Now this is all before we bought the company. And I could work extra. Weekends, I had 3 children. Make some extra money. I did a lot of that until we bought the company. But we lived up at Watauga. About that time, I thought, well, it's about 10 years we've been up there. We need a bigger house. We got 3 kids, a 2-bedroom. We went down to southeast Fort Worth off of Berry Street and 287 in the Rolling Hills there and bought a nice little 3-bedroom house. I think it was $17,000 or something, brick, nice part of town. So that's where the kids grew up then. That's of course was on the Milliken Press, but then our partial. And we did a lot of fishing and all that. We had a lot of fishing and boating and with my daddy-in-law, Abe Martin, and deer hunted and still worked in the printing. And I had a good life. Maria and I, the kids went to school there in that area. They had their kid friends and we could go to San Antonio. We took the kids to the beach a lot. I had some folks living in Houston on the Hodges side. We'd visit them, and I had a good life and still worked a lot. The company did well. We had secretaries out there and all that kind of stuff. My wife, Tiny Marie Martin, that I had met from a horse accident up in the pasture, was one I married. And 46 years later, 44 years later, after we married, she became ill and come to find out she had a malignant brain tumor. And they tried to operate on it, and it was inoperable, so it didn't really do any good. But the odd thing about it is her brother, Wallace E. Martin, had been a pilot for United Airlines and had lived in Denver, Colorado with his families, and with the airlines he moved around with. He was coming in from the Pacific, I think it was Hawaii. He couldn't see the runway. He was diagnosed in with a brain tumor, and he passed away before Marie. Okay, Marie had hers, and after 46 years, I decided I'd sell out my plant to Sam H. Cook and retire and take care of her, which I did. We'd built this acreage down in Burleson, like a 6-8 acre, and built a nice house down there off the woods and had nice workshops and good gardens until she discovered she had that cancer. Of course, Wiley Hospital was close. And the odd thing about that is that Wallace had his and passed away. Marie had gotten hers, but 2 years prior to Marie's had her malignant brain tumor. Her mother, Mary McInerney Martin, had become ill. She was at Hughley Hospital with her doctor, and she had a blood disorder of cancer. I think they called it leukemia, I believe it was. She only lived out there about 22 days, and she passed away. She was on, I think, the 3rd floor in the room up there. And then after she passed away, and we noticed about Marie, we took her to Hughley. She was on the same floor, 2 rooms down the hall from where her mother died. And her mother passed away. At 6:20 or thereabouts that evening, 2 years prior, Marie passed away. About 20 minutes later, the same time, 2 rooms away. It was odd. Of course, Marie passed away and was buried in Greenwood Cemetery, where I have established family burial grounds for 8 people. So that was 46 years of marriage. We had a lot of photographs. We did a lot of good things, worked hard. So that was kind of the end of my era with my first wife. So a couple of years there, acquaintance of Marie and me, there was a Helen Sellers. She had 3 children. Helen Sellers worked for a company that sold printing supplies, and I bought from them. We got acquainted. Marie was working in my office for a while, and Helen would come over there, and I'd have to go over to the Fort Worth Litho where I got supplies. We became friends with the Helen Quinlan Sellers. She had 3 children. They lived out on the west side of Camp Bowie. One day I heard that this Helen Sellers was working in Dallas for Trinity Industries. One of my customers dealt with the Trinity Industries, and they had her name on his desk. It was Helen with 2 L's, Sellers. I said, 2 L's is unusual. What about this girl? So, oh, she's a credit manager. You have to go through her. I said, well, what about it? He said, Sellers. I said, is she married? What is it? Oh, I think she's been divorced for years. I said, well, you got her phone number home? No, I ain't got it. So anyway, I looked up Dallas' phone number. Sure enough, it was she lived on Royal Lane, and she was single, had been single for 18 years. I called her one evening after I found it out. We go over and have lunch, go out to eat and get acquainted. And then we did, and I go back. And each week I had a place in Lake Fork and my bass boat and the marinas at Lake Pope's Landing, and we got to going down there, and she's fishing with me. And it seemed like it was meant to be, and we fell very much in love. And we married in 1990, and I decided to sell the farm or the place in Burleson, and we were going to look for a place in Fort Worth. She was going to retire, and because she's 68, but then I was 60, so whatever. Her 3 children lived here because when she was married and they was growing up, this was the area that they used schools till she divorced Elmer Buck Sellers. This was 18 years ago, so the kids were grown away from home. But anyway, Helen and I, we established a courtship. We married. I think both sides of the family agreed with the kids that it's a good deal. We found a house on Airport Freeway, Hurst, Texas, on Plainview Drive. We got a good deal on it. I'd sold my place in the farm, and we bought that, and I paid cash for it because I had sold the place down there. She sold her house, her equity, in Dallas. She had a 0-lot home built, lived by herself. Sometime her granddaughter Jenny would live with her. So then we started our life, so to speak, Helen and I, at that Plainview address. We did a lot of things. We continued to go to the place, to the lake. We fished. On our honeymoon, we went for, I think it was 14 days, honeymoon trip to the Caribbean. We went to 5 islands, ended up in Venezuela and so forth. A nice honeymoon. Then we started our life there on Plainview Drive, 405 Plainview, whatever it was. And I had sold out, and so we traveled. We married on October the 12th. My birthday was October the 13th. We had the wedding in Arlington, just our family, nice wedding. Then we left there and flew to wherever and got on a ship for that honeymoon. But we traveled. We went to Hawaii and went to Europe for 21 days, I think it was, Italy and Germany, all that. That was very good. And it was a tour bus with a tour guide that took us to all the nice places. Now, Terry Lee was not married. He was the middle child. William Elmer Sellers was the oldest boy, was the boy. Of course, they called him Bill Sellers. and then Terry was born. Terry worked for the Hearst Fire Department for 20-some years. He retired there as an officer. But he'd had other things in Dallas. He had a hazmat, and he had 2 or 3 companies on the side. He sold his house here, and then he moved to Costa Rica single and continued to do day trading for stock markets, which he helped me then. He did some real good deals for me for the 2 or 3 years. He then took a disease, spinal meningitis of some sort. He never recovered. In about 10 days, he passed away. They had to send his ashes up here because you can't send bodies from that country. And we had the service at Lucas Funeral Home here in Hearst. He left his retirement to Helen, which was nice. Pretty nice sum of money every month. But while Helen and I we've been married 26 years, and she had a stroke in 2010. A stroke then affected her left arm. It affected her walking. She was almost confined to a wheelchair at that time. She took therapies and all that. Her condition became worse, so in 2014, we had to get some people here to help at home. One lived here for a while in the house, in-house. She began to get Alzheimer's disease. I couldn't get anybody really to stay here to help that was good. Now, too many hours a day. I was doing a night shift 7 days a week. Her Alzheimer's were getting worse. Her children and mine seemed to think that maybe she should be in a senior home, for take care of her, which we took her to Brookdale, which was in Richland Hills, there on Glenview. And then this is this October and November of 2016, she's still in there. She's been there for 8 months to a year. Her Alzheimer's is getting worse. I do go over there every morning for breakfast. I go over there for evenings, get to bed. That's my daily deal, 7 days a week. So this is the point we're in now. It's that date. But these last 26 years, we've had a good marriage. We got along good. We did a lot of things. We traveled Colorado. She was born in Kansas, Liberal. Her folks lived up there. We went up to Liberal, Kansas a lot of times, visit her sisters and all that. And then we, like I say, we just traveled to San Antonio. We did a lot of things. We go to the hill country. We'd go fishing a lot. I'd fish off the bay. She'd go. And so it's a good marriage. And I never did go back to work after I retired. And she didn't either. Well, there's a lot of little things I really can't think of right now that was good with growing up and getting married and first time, second time. I'll just say that then at 20-some years ago, there was a friend of mine named Fred Noor. He was a salesman for paper that called on me at the Milliken Press. He and I become friends. He was an avid fisherman like me, daylight to dark. So then they bought a place down at Lake Fork at Post Landing. I had a travel trailer. So he and I, we fished all the time. He was there a lot. So this Fred Noor became a fishing buddy. Abe Martin was getting a little older, but Abe was still a fishing buddy. He'd come down to our lake trailer, which was on the water, and my marina there. I had this nice Ranger boat with a good engine, and we bass fish, crappie fish, any kind of fishing. And we'd go down there and spend maybe 4 or 5 days at a time. It was a good life. And then, of course, Mr. Martin, he passed away at 95 here a few years ago. I lost him. Fred Noor, he had cancer. And I lost him about 10 or 15 years ago. I don't have anybody to go fishing with me anymore. I still have my boat, still go. Sometimes I hire a guide. But there's so many things we've done that it's too numerous to mention. I just have to write it all in a book, a lot of the little stuff. But that's basically about been my life. My daughter married, and of course she divorced, married again. Went to Katy, Texas. She's been down in Katy all these years, had her children. My son Wiley David, he moved to Houston. He was with the company that put up molding, etc. homes. He's still down there, but he retired from his computer programming, etc. So he's building a little house near Lake Livingston. And he has a cruiser boat, pretty good size, so he pulled it up there. He is living in this boat. It has everything that you want. It's, electricity, icebox, and everything. Just confined a little bit until he gets his house built. So that's kind of his life. My Patricia, my middle daughter, she married, had a child, and then she divorced. She married Chandler A. Robinson the second. He was a policeman in the Fort Worth department. They had some children. They had Jennifer and Alan, his son, which got killed in a motorcycle wreck. He had one son, but his marriage, which is Junior now, and I think he's number 3, Alan Jr. And since then, this last few years, he's married. He has 3 children, and one of them is Chandler Alan Robinson the 5th, I think it is. They live at Rome, Texas. We visit them. So my family life has been away from home, but we've been seeing them where they go. They come see us here. Her children, like I say, was Bill Williams Sellers. He was with Lon Smith Roofing Company for years. He owned part of it at one time. Terry, her the child, he went to Costa Rica, I was telling you about, and passed away. Buried in Blue Bonnet Cemetery along with his dad. Their daughter, Gwendolyn, they call her Gwen, Sellers, married Albie. They live here 5-6 miles from us, and they've had one child. Bill Sellers was married. He had one daughter, Jana, and Jana's got 2 children, which is Helen's great-grandkids. They're now 18, 16, going to college, etc., as of 2016. So her life has been with her children. We go to their house, they come here, and, we kind of had a good life. I still went to the lake. Helen's very good housekeeper, very good cook, and she kept good house. But in the meantime, before we moved out here at this new place, the city, and we live in Hurst on the airport freeway, the state of Texas wanted to ride in that freeway. Our house was along the old freeway, which they had to condemn and move all them houses up this Plain Street and others. So the state came and told us what it was, and they gave us a settlement, a very good settlement. They told us to go buy us a house for 3 times what we had at the other house. We looked, we found one here at 405 Evergreen Drive, the north part of Hurst. So we moved up here, and Helen and I have had about 12 years or so here. Nice house, nice brick house, everything you want.